This leg is my standing leg. I've got my arch lifted. I'm using my good biomechanics. I'm organized and activated over here, dialing my knee and dialing my thigh out. My knee wants to fall in. I'm not going to let it do that. Welcome everyone. This is Pose of the Week, and this next group of postures and videos you're going to see have to do with something very specific that I want to talk about, and I've written a few articles about. So, in yoga, we're trying for range of motion. Many people are anyway. There's sort of a goal that people have around getting into certain postures, especially the ones that require a great deal of range of motion. And so the way that we try to develop our range of motion, our flexibility, if you want to call it that, is by passive stretching, which would mean that we would go to the end of our range in a pose, as deep as we can in the pose, and then try to stay there for a really long time. Maybe try to do those poses in a really hot room, or try to hold the pose for 3 or 4 or 5 or more minutes, that kind of thing. That's passive stretching. So we know for a fact, if you understood exercise physiology or tissue physiology, that is not going to have the effect that you think on the tissue. Yes, you may increase your range of motion, but you won't have access to that range. That's a passive range of motion. So that doesn't mean that you'll actually be able to use that range of motion. So I want to take these next few videos and just talk about ways that you can actually get more range of motion around your joints, but you're going to have range of control, which is so much better than passive range of motion that you can't actually use or access yourself, unless, somebody sits on you or you push yourself into a corner, basically. So I'm going to start with this concept of eccentric loading and activation at end range. If that sounds kind of technical, don't worry, it's really simple in practice. So we're going to take a simple lunge pose. So I'm going to have my hands on my hips, and you see I'm wearing socks. If you live in a cold place like I do, you're going to have lots and lots of socks you can use. So I'm going to keep one foot really stable on my mat, and I'm going to start sliding with this other one. So what I'm doing here is I'm sliding down into a lunge, and then I'm going to slide myself back up. This leg is my standing leg. I've got my arch lifted. I'm using my good biomechanics. I'm organized and activated over here, dialing my knee and dialing my thigh out. My knee wants to fall in. I'm not going to let it do that. And then with this back foot, I'm grounding through my great toe pad, and I'm sliding down into a lunge, and then I'm coming back up. This is a kind of eccentric loading where my muscles are lengthening under tension. So we wouldn't call this a stretch. It's an eccentric load because my muscles are contracting. I'm going to pull myself up out of that. So the way I work on developing my range of motion here is by going to the end of my range and activating up out of it. So I'm actively finding it, actively rising out of it. So in the case of, say, a passive stretch, you might get down into the lowest version you have of a pose, stay there for a really long time. I guarantee if you stay there for more than a few seconds, you will not be able to activate out of the posture because of the loss of force production or force generation ability that stretching has that effect on the tissue. So I'm going to take myself up and out of that pose. So you can see that I have range of control in this position. So instead of getting down and having to lift myself out of the pose somehow, I'm remaining active. That is the difference between a passive stretching protocol and having range of control. So we're going to do a whole bunch of different postures and practices, different angles that we can look at where we're developing our range of control. This is a range that I have access to if I want. And I know I'm wearing socks, and we don't usually do that in yoga. You could also do this with a yoga blanket. So use whatever you have available. If I was on a carpet, I could put a plastic bag on my foot and slide across the carpet. So, get creative, but very important to develop your range of control. The other thing about staying active at those end ranges is I make the tissue itself around the joint, but also the muscle tissue, I make that tissue more resilient. They call that building my tissue tolerance. So it makes it very unlikely that I could injure myself in a practice like yoga if I have tissue tolerance. So anyways, I hope you're going to enjoy the rest of the series. Get on your socks and try that out in your own practice, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.